Want a quick 10-minute wrap-up of the week's compliance news? Well, this is the podcast for you, 10 for 10, where Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, wraps up 10 top compliance stories which occurred over the past week. If you don't know, Tom has a daily news podcast, appropriately called the Daily Compliance News, and 10 for 10 wraps up the week. So get up on a Saturday morning, have a great cup of coffee, and check out 10 for 10, the podcast which gives you the week's top compliance news. Are you interested in upping your game in compliance through the use of AI and machine learning technology? Well, check out my latest book, Upping Your Game, How Compliance and Risk Management Move to 2030 and Beyond. You can check it out in the show notes. I've got a link to the purchase at Amazon.com. Upping Your Game. The 10 top compliance stories for the week ending Saturday, August 9th, 2025. We begin with a story from the Wall Street Journal, which reports that Donald Trump has now reminded all U.S. CEOs who the ultimate boss is, as he told Intel to fire its CEO because he didn't like him. Why didn't he like him? Well, one, he's Chinese. Two, he does business in China. And perhaps most importantly, Intel made a bunch of money under the CHIPS Act, and that anyone who got any benefit from the Biden or even back to the Obama administration is now in the direct line of fire of Donald Trump. So we apparently have a new stakeholder for all corporations, the President of the United States, who will intervene personally to tell them how to run their business. Good luck with that. Next up from the Wall Street Journal opinion section, not something we talk about too often, particularly Peggy Noonan. And she reports that, talks about AI and how it's going to destroy jobs. And it's coming for the consultants. And even McKinsey believes this is existential, not that it would be bad for McKinsey with all their bad rot to go away. But this AI story is that you will need to really think about how you are employing people. Law firms, accounting firms, consulting firms, Microsoft. We got lots of different people who are going to lose their jobs unless they learn how to incorporate AI into them. From Bloomberg reports that Tesla's board has approved an interim stock award worth about $30 billion to its CEO, Elon Musk, a massive payout meant to keep the billionaire's attention on the automaker as a legal fight over his 2018 pay package rages on. Now, if you've got to pay your CEO to keep him focused on your corporation, what does that say about, number one, your CEO, number two, your corporation, and three, your job as board? Pretty poor on all of them. Nevertheless, it underscores Trump's grip on the company, even as he struggles with failing electric vehicle sales, a slumping stock price due to his inanity with the Trump administration. He clearly wants to go into space, and that's where his focus is going to be, so can't believe the board did that. Next up from Axios, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wants to fire the prosecutor, actually the state attorney general in Israel, for prosecuting him. Can he do that? Well, the Israeli Supreme Court said no, but of course Netanyahu, with his spiritual guru and godfather of Donald Trump, is going to follow his lead and try to fire anyone who gets in his way. So, will democracy and anti-corruption still exist in Israel? It's an open question as much as whether it will in the United States. Next up from the Wall Street Journal, UBS is set to pay $300 million to settle Credit Suisse obligations under the Credit Suisse DPA from 2017. In that year, Credit Suisse finalized a $5.3 billion agreement with the DOJ to resolve claims. The settlement included a $2.5 billion and customer relief payment of $3.8 billion. No word on exactly how much the company had actually paid, but UBS is getting a discount to get out from under the Credit Suisse obligations. So slowly but surely, UBS is digging its way out of the Credit Suisse morass. Next up from the BBC, it reports that the F1 tycoon and Singapore-based billionaire hotelier One Bing Singh has admitted to abetting the obstruction of justice by helping the ex-transportation minister, Mr. Iswaran, cover up evidence while he was being investigated for corruption. Ong gave lavish gifts to Iswaran, and they were engaged in official business, which violates the tough anti-corruption laws in Singapore. Next up, President Trump has ordered banks to be punished if they discriminate against conservatives. So in an interesting move, kind of paralleling the ultimate CEO role, if you deny a bank denies a loan to a conservative, number one, what is a conservative? It's sure not Donald Trump. But if you can define what a conservative is, what if they're a bad credit risk? What if you denied the loan on business reasons? Or now you're going to have to take on bad credit risks, and what are the other shareholders in your company going to do about that? All good questions as Trump remolds the U.S. in his image. Next up from the Financial Times. In the opinion section from Ivan Krastev, what happens when anti-corruption campaigns become corrupted? Late last month, Ukrainian President Zelensky signed a law giving Ukrainians Prosecutor General new powers over the National Anti-Corruption Bureau and Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office. Both of these were established with enthusiastic Western backing by the 2014 resolution. Zelensky probably drew the wrong lesson from Donald Trump, who has eviscerated all of these groups in the U.S. Department of Justice, and Zelensky thought, well, he would just do the same. Now, it's not clear if he was doing this under the instructions of Trump or if it was going to be done so that others could engage in bribery and corruption in Ukraine. But the people literally revolted, and he had to back down. But what happens when anti-corruption becomes corrupted? Next up from the New York Times, an incredibly troubling story about sexual assaults by Uber drivers against passengers. And what's so troubling about it, number one, that they happened, but number two, that Uber had come up with policies, procedures, and actions to help prevent these, but they were not allowed to be implemented. Uber said that its purpose/goal is not to be the police. When there was a discussion about global safety standards, our bar is much lower, and our goal is to protect the company and set a tolerable risk level for our operations. So apparently sexual assault of passengers, women drivers most specifically, is within the acceptable risk tolerance of Uber. And once this document gets out, I'm sure all those plaintiffs' lawyers out there will grab a hold of it and start waving it in front of a jury, as well they should. Next up from Reuters. The U.S. Ninth Court of Appeals held that the SEC so-called gag rule is constitutional. In the 3-0 decision, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said it was not unconstitutional on its face, but it could violate the First Amendment depending on how it's applied. The rule, reflecting SEC policy back to 1972, requires that settling defendants to say at least that, if they get it admit or deny, they can't criticize the conduct of the SEC. Several companies have fought this, and indeed 12 petitioners appealed the decision in January 2024 not to amend the rule. One petitioner took a similar case to the U.S. Supreme Court in 2022, but the court denied cert on it. The Court of Appeals found that while some defendants might find the rule coercive, they're certainly free not to settle, and that the cost or price of a settlement with no admission or denial of liability is a gag. This is Tom Fox again. 10 for 10 is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network. I'd also urge you to check out the Daily Compliance News, which posts every week from Monday to Friday, where I give 4 curated stories of bribery, corruption, and compliance events that will allow you to help you start your day as well. So check out the Daily Compliance News and subscribe or rate and review to both 10 for 10 and the Daily Compliance News. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of 10 for 10. I hope you'll check out the newest podcast in the Compliance Podcast Network, the Compliance Tip of the Day. In Compliance Tip of the Day, I give a 5 to 8 minute summary of one tip that you can integrate into your compliance program or put together for greater compliance program efficiency. Finally, if you're a Sherlock Holmes fan, I am preparing a new season of Adventures in Compliance where I go through the 4 novels of Sherlock Holmes. Hear it on the Compliance Podcast Network.